Just doing a quick mic test here for the folks that are on Teams. Can you hear us okay? If you can, please just give us a thumbs up. Thank you. Okay, so we'll get started at 6:30 on the dot. I appreciate everyone coming this evening to the first information session for the Town Hall project. This is going to just be the first session. You're going to hear from us tonight that we're actually going to have additional public sessions. In those public sessions, the entire intent is to show you exactly what we've done task-wise up to the date and time, and then to provide that information to you as voters so that you have all the up-to-date information as we're going along and progressing through this process. First off, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Chris DeBruin. I'm a resident of Brimfield. Just a little bit about my background is that I'm a lawyer by trade. My background is in construction. I work with developers, contractors, around the country, also globally, internationally. And I'm involved in construction projects from the time of bid, in design, all the way to turnover, and even when they have like warranty issues at the end of the construction project. So I joined the committee this past, was it summertime? Summertime. And the reason I did was because after the first survey, I had a lot of concerns that the town's citizens expressed during the survey. I figured with my background, being thoroughly involved in these types of projects, that I could help the process, but I could also deliver back to you real information, and that we could give you credible information so that when the time comes for the town to vote on this particular project, you have a lot of information that's come directly from our consultants, directly from the building committee members, and all of us. So that's why I joined. I do want to recognize the other building committee members. Not everyone can make it here tonight. If you want to just raise your hand if you're on the committee. Thank you so much. I want to stress that all the building committee members are volunteers. We each volunteered for our own reasons. I just told you my reason. And all these volunteers so far have worked tons of hours on this issue, working with the consultants that have been hired by the town. We're all residents. We have all the same concerns that the residents do. We also have all of our own personal beliefs about certain aspects of the project, certain economic issues, all of those things. We don't always agree with each other. We have great, healthy debate within our committee. But I will tell you what I'm mostly proud of with this group is that we never leave a meeting without having some common sense consensus amongst us, despite the fact that we don't always agree on the issues. So I will tell you that we exhaust our efforts to flush out these matters and try to come to that common sense recommendation. So thank you again. The structure for tonight, very simple. Like I said, we're going to go over what we've done, where we are from a design update standpoint with our consultants. You're going to hear about certain things like surveys of buildings. You're going to hear about certain things having to do with challenges, issues, things that we've made conclusions on. And after each section, we're going to give the public a chance to ask questions, both on Teams and here. We are being recorded, audio recorded and video recorded for this meeting. So if someone couldn't join Teams tonight, we will provide access to that recording, so at any point in time, someone can go on, refresh themselves, and take a look at the recording. So the only thing with the question and answer sessions, I have a few different rules. Number one, please ask a question that is pertinent and material to the section that we just reviewed. Number two, Please make sure that you keep your questions as short as you can. We anticipate a lot of questions. We want to give everyone an opportunity to have their question posed. You come up to the microphone because it is being recorded. And just like any other town meeting, just identify yourself, tell us where your residence is, and then ask your question. We will try to answer all questions, but we're only going to spend maybe 5 to 10 minutes after each section. However, we'll stay afterwards. Some of the building committee members are. If you have additional questions you want to ask us personally, we're happy to do so. You're also going to get a link, an email address link that's on our website, where you can also submit questions. If you don't want to ask it in public, you can submit those to us, and we'll be able to answer those for you as well. The burning question, okay, which you will not hear tonight, is this burning question that we all have, which is, how much is this going to cost, okay? The reason why that's not happening tonight is because we have a schedule we're on. The schedule is very specific about all the activities that we're doing. That's not part of our schedule right now. We are actually scheduled to have our cost estimation of scopes of work around February, okay? So at the next information session, that session will be largely dedicated to all those questions that everyone has, including me, about cost of the project, what the scopes of work will be, as well as we have been working with the Finance Committee actively to keep them updated, so at that meeting they can come here also and give the voters real information as to exactly what the impact will be from a household perspective. Having said that, okay, you will hear us say time and time again that we have to vote on this budget eventually. However, that is also subject to, at some point in time, us being able to get grants and other potential monies to offset that. And it's really important to understand the context of that because of the fact that we're dealing with a historic property here. This property, which a lot of people don't actually understand, is part of our historical district. When they put this district together, they inventory historical parts and pieces of our community. They put it on a list, they apply, and we become part of a state historical register, as well as the National Historical Register. So this particular property, our town hall building, is part of that. In fact, it's probably the second most important building within that inventory list. And you're going to learn a lot about that tonight and what that means. So the other thing that you're going to learn about is when you are working with a historical building like this in a historical district, we have certain obligations. And a lot of those obligations are outlined to us by the Mass Historical Commission, as well as the Secretary of Interior for the federal government. And if we don't meet these standards, we do adversely potentially impact not only that building and the ability to do things with it, but also we impact the historical district as a whole. So we're very mindful of that in the building committee, and it's one of the important factors that we have to take into consideration when we're talking about that property. But our consultants here are going to tell you about some of those standards and why we have made certain recommendations today. Last part. You'll be happy to know, okay, because there's all kinds of talk about this building. You'll be happy to know that this team of professional consultants, and by the way, the only individuals that are here are from ICON tonight and Turba, but there's a whole team of sub-consultants that are working on this project, structural people, foundation people, building envelope individuals. There's a whole slew of individuals that are supporting these positions. And what you're going to hear tonight is, in a whole, the historical property, the historical building, is robust construction. Bottom line.
Is there a reason we can't see your meeting?
We're broadcasting live video. Oh, we're not. Oh, we're not broadcasting live video. So
No, you're not.
No, we're not.
Thank you.
Yeah, the presentation will be. So, sorry about that. So you're going to find out that our consultants have concluded that it is robust construction, with the exception of one part of this building, which, by the way, is not part of the original historic structure. There was a 1932 addition that was placed onto the historic structure, and what you're going to find out is that's the exception. That's the one area that is not the robust construction the historical building is. So having said all this, I'm going to turn it over to Tony from Turba. He's our owner's representative project manager, and thank you.
Testing. Can everybody hear me? Awesome. Feels good to be back in Brimfield. I don't know if you remember me from our spring session.
Building committee is muted now, Chris.
Testing. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. So online can hear me and you guys can hear me. So can we go to the first slide? Just going to start off by telling you what we've been up to since the town voted in the spring to fund the project going to the schematic design phase. We've been busy at work. The first thing that we did is we put out an invitation for architects to work on the project, and this is part of a state designer selection process, so it's kind of laid out for us. We received 6 proposals. We narrowed those down in the committee to 2 architects. We interviewed those 2 architects and we selected Icon Architecture. Icon is working on the Sturbridge Senior Center, so that's a project that's local. And they also specialize in adaptive reuse and historic restoration of buildings. So I wanted to introduce our 2 team members from Icon, Ned Colliers and Mark McKevitz. Some of you know Mark through the work that we've done, because one of the main components of what we've been doing at the town hall, at the existing annex, is what we call programming. So programming is when we interview everyone at the town who works at the town, who's going to have a space in the new building, and we talk about their needs for what they need to do their job, obviously, what type of storage needs they have. We're not only just looking at their needs kind of in the short term, what they need right now, but we're trying to project out. We've been talking about a 5-year window, like what do you need now and what will you need in a few 5 years from now. So that exercise is what we call programming. We create a spreadsheet with everybody's needs, not just spatially, but we'll also later on get into like furniture and get down to the nitty-gritty. So Mark's been leading that effort. So everyone at the town hall has met him a few times. And so we did a first draft, Mark revisited, and we continued to work with the town departments until we had it all nailed down. And you're going to see some plans tonight which represent that work. The other thing that we've been working on, like Chris mentioned, was we've been doing an exhaustive existing condition survey of the actual building. That means that we have consultants, like Chris said, that are on the Icons team, which include mechanical, electrical, plumbing, site civil, structural, building envelope, and then their expertise as architects working in on historic buildings. So we compiled all of that existing conditions data, and so that's when we learned about the addition. You're going to hear a little bit about that tonight, not just about the adaptive reuse of the town hall, but how we want to try and handle that sort of subservient construction addition that was added in 1932. So you hear about that. So these are the 3 things that we've been working on. That building, programming. We did do some very early cost modeling because we promised you as a town that we would try to do this adaptive reuse in a range of 8 to 9.5 million, and we're still working within that range. So we're not outside of what we talked about initially for this project. From our building analysis and the programming, we had to come up with various test fits, because you'll see this has to be a very efficient design to get it to fit in the existing building. So we've done numerous test fits and we've landed on one that's been endorsed by the Building Committee. We've been to the Historic Commission. They've also endorsed it, and we've provided some updates to the Select Board along the whole way. So having said that, what we're going to do now is go over this preferred option. And to do that, I'm going to hand it over to Mark. And like Chris mentioned, there are like 4 or 5 sections. So that's when we're going to stop and just take your questions from that section and then try to move on. So we don't have a whole range of questions all over the map at the end. Any questions so far? Okay.
Tony, one thing, I just want to make sure teams can see what I'm.
Okay.
So, do they see the PowerPoint slides right now?
Is everyone on Teams seeing the PowerPoint slide that has the 4 squares? 3 of them are kind of green with some orange arrows.
Yes, I see it.
Okay. Awesome.
And can everybody on Teams hear me? This is Mark McKevitz with Icon Architecture. And stand directly in front of the speaker. Can the folks on Teams hear me?
Yes.
All right, great. So, I'll just walk over here. Oh, we got to go back to PowerPoint here. There we go. So this is the items we're going to be talking about tonight. The whole process is actually what Tony covered, so we're not going to go back over that. We have the architectural space programming, the existing conditions, the actual conditions of the structure. We're going to talk about the historic considerations that Chris touched on and actually covered a lot of what I'm going to cover. And then we're going to talk about the design approach that we've taken along with the preferred option that was selected. And then at the end, Tony's going to come back and talk about next steps. So with that, so next slide. So our architectural space programming is indeed, first we have a 3-step process within our office. We meet with everybody that is going to be an end user or stakeholder with the building. And we explain to them how we're going to do this. Then we meet with everybody individually. And as we meet with them, we learn unique things about how they do their job, how their job may evolve in the future, and the space needs that they need for their department to meet their mission. And that's very important. The other thing that we always look for is what is unique to Brimfield? What is unique to this town? What is unique to Brimfield? We create tables. We look at what departments want to be near one another. We look at equipment needs, if that's part of the program. We look at public meeting spaces, etc. And then we as Tony pointed out, we go back and we meet with everybody again. We say, did we get this right? What do we need to massage to make this work for you? And then we reach approval. And so one thing we have been doing with this as part of our test fits is we've been massaging the program. So it's not 100% final, but we're probably 98% of the way there. And that is part of this. So next slide. The other part is we create, in our practice, we create the foundation, which is the absolute minimum that each of these departments need to do their job. And then beyond that, we look at what community spaces, what shared spaces, because your basic needs are being met, what would you be willing to share? Things like meeting spaces and other print room. So those types of things get put in as well. So, yeah, and the goal of that is that we, at the end of the day, we're using less space to accomplish the goals of everybody. It becomes a more efficient, more used building. So these are sort of best practices throughout our municipal practice. We look at an admin workstation area and how much square footage that is. Leadership offices, 150 square foot typical mid-manager office. However, in Brimfield, after speaking with everybody, it was determined that there really isn't a need for the largest office size, that people that can take meetings with 2 people or 3 people, 150 square feet will do. So we cut that down. Next slide, please. And then the other thing we have are service counters and conference rooms, and that's one thing that is very deficient in the annex. So, next slide. The other part of programming is figuring out how to make a more efficient set of spaces and efficiency in general. And when we talk about efficiency, we are looking at the spaces that we need to function, program spaces, but we also have to subtract out the square footage for circulation, for structure, for ductwork, for all that other stuff. So our proposed program of about 7,700 square feet is, and that's net square feet, not gross square feet. That is when we go and we multiply to include all the other stuff, is 77% efficient, but it lives in a vacuum. The existing town hall is a less efficient building, mostly because the basement is so cut up and so squirrely, for lack of a better word, that it is hard to use anything down there. So the outcomes that, again, are unique to Brimfield are the shortage of staff meeting. There isn't a conference room in the existing building. That this town has 10 committees from 2 to 8 people, and they do a lot of work for the town, but they have no space to meet. That we will need and are incorporating an elevator and stair so that we can use what we have. We're going to reuse half of the Great Hall so that we have that great double height space, those great huge windows, and we're not interfering with them. And then clean out the basement and, as we noted previously, reduce the size of the leadership offices. So are there any questions on architectural space programming?
If you could just step up to the mic right there, that'd be great. Anyone who wants to do a question, if you could come up to the microphone, just identify yourself, tell us where you reside.
Amor Clark, 73 Little Elm. My question is, or a concern of mine, over the years, I've seen how space tends to contract because users of space tend to acquire stuff. Sometimes we call it clutter. Some people, I call it records, file space, and everything else. And I'm concerned that if at the very beginning you're eliminating some of the space for that you may be borrowing from Peter to pay Paul.
Yeah, check.
So for those on Teams, the question was about whether or not we should reduce the square footage preemptively for the office space. And so it's a really good question. One of the reasons for the 200 square foot size leadership office is we typically size those to have meeting space for 4 to 6 people within the office. Typically the amount of storage doesn't change that much from a 150 square foot office to a 200 square foot office. And we learned in meeting with everybody that really those 4 to 6 person meetings don't take place that often, and that's where we moved to having more to introducing small conference rooms, as you saw there. So we have accommodated for storage. There is extensive storage in the basement, and there is storage space within each office suite. The other thing that I would say is that we differentiate between records and equipment that needs to be accessed every day, and that's typically stored within the suite, and then long-term storage, which is things like public records that need to be kept for 7 or 10 years that don't need to be accessed as often.
And you'll actually see in the plans, and this was part of the questions to everyone in the departments, was how much storage do you need in your office for day-to-day, year-to-year, week-to-week operations, and then what's your long-term storage needs? So that was part of this programming that Mark did, and everybody was interviewed on this. So currently, the design has storage within the offices for whatever they need, but there's also a long-term storage component in the basement. You're gonna see it in the plans. It's a huge storage room and vault area for vital records, which is something that we don't have now, like proper storage for vital records. So we have started to differentiate with the departments, like what do you need day to day? And they have space in their offices now for that. And then long-term storage for these like state records, whatever the requirements are more in the basement, so.
Since it doesn't seem that there are any other questions on this section, I'm just going to leave you with one comment, I think, from the building committee, which is that's a topic that we talk about. And one of the topics that has come up quite often in our discussions is there's a difference between what people want versus what we actually need. And we're focused, the committee is, on moving to what we need, not necessarily what we want all the time. And there's also another aspect of this. When we're talking about storage, one of the directives that we sent out as we're discovering things in the town hall and what we have for records, what we have to keep, what we don't, what we also discovered is there's a lot of digitization that has to occur at this point with a lot of those departments. There's a lot of unnecessary documentation at the moment that's taking up a significant amount of space. There are some boards and committees who have done a great job already of filtering through those documents, digitizing them, getting rid of what isn't necessary anymore. So this process and that question is actually flushing out a lot of great issues geared towards this topic of efficiency and us being more efficient. So that would be my commentary. I think we're good for the next section if we want to go on to that.
So this is the town hall existing conditions and what we have found as we have had our engineers out here and as well as our envelope specialists in office. Next slide, please. So for the bell tower, which is such a great feature, there are some water issues, and in general, I would say the vast majority, and they're not big, the vast majority of the issues are water-based. It's taking the decorative trim that has deteriorated due to water damage, cleaning that up, and installing new as needed, repainting. That's a big part of this. Next slide. The front stair needs replacement. That is again due to rot. The hand and guardrails are not to code, and that is something that while the rise and run of the stair works, the guardrail is too short, so we'll need to put in something new there. And the existing door we want to refurbish and put in new code-compliant door hardware. So this is the view from a 1907 postcard on the right side. Sorry, left side, my right, and then today. And you can see that little 2-story, 3-window, 1-door addition at the back. And that is the 1932 addition that both Chris and Tony referenced prior. And so, if you can go forward to the next slide, that is this area. So that is the area with the stage. And you can see, for those at home, they're on screen, I apologize, but here you can see the roof addition over the stage was simply added on to the existing building. And you can see that the privy and the stair and all of that good stuff.
This line right here.
Yeah, exactly.
This is the original.
Oh my gosh, you are the man. Okay, so this is the edge of the original building right here. So if you click. So the building does need a new roof, and that would be an asphalt shingle system. And then there is damage at the chimneys to the masonry that needs to be repointed. There may be some masonry, some brick that needs to be removed and replaced. But in general, the masonry is in good shape, especially at the base. And the foundations, so the other thing we propose doing is removing the existing windows and putting back with aluminum clad historically appropriate wood windows. This is something that we do commonly in a renovation practice. That it's a window that is wood on the interior, and because it's aluminum clad, it is much longer lasting without a lot of upkeep needed. And then the foundations, we need to take the paint off of the existing brick. That allows the water to get out. Right now it is holding in a bit of moisture, but again, it's not critical. There's the structural engineer thinks this building is in great shape, and we are continuing to work with her as to how we go forward with renovations. So, are there any further questions, or are there any questions either online or in the room about the existing conditions of the building? Okay. So next we're going to talk about the historic...
Actually, just one, just because we have the time, and we said we were going to have the time for questions. Again, I think it's good for me to share the type of commentary that we have amongst us when we're talking to the consultants and we're going through some of these issues. And the existing conditions survey, that all those reviews by the sub-consultants was extremely, extremely important to us, because we wanted to feel like we could come out and actually make a real recommendation that says, yes, this can be restored, yes, this is good construction, yes, it's robust, all of these things. We told our consultants that that's what we needed to know that for certain, because you're going to hear a common phrase from me throughout these different information sessions, and the common phrase is, it's never good to take good money and throw it after bad. It's never good to take good money to put it towards bad construction to make it better. So we were very conscientious of that, and that historic building, that structure, that 1907 structure on the postcard, which was actually built in 1878, you're going to learn a lot more about why it's historic at some point in time, the significance of it, and that building is, like they say, they don't build them like that anymore. It is a great, robust building. That's what all these professional consultants have concluded. So I just wanted to offer that, because this was a very important priority to us, to make sure that, yes, this was worth it in the long run, so.
So this building is in the Brimfield Town Center Historic District. It was proposed and issued to the National Register and the Mass Historic Commission in 1996, and it was approved in 2006. This building is a contributing building, and as Chris pointed out, probably one of the two most important buildings. One of the reasons this building is really important is because it is a stick-style municipal institutional building. And the stick style was typically used for residential construction. And that is a rarity. The other thing is Eugene Clarence Gardner, the image on the left here, he is a prolific Central Mass architect, and he primarily worked in brick. But this building is, again, built out of wood and built in wood. And that is very unique. And in reality, those two features alone would make this building, you could simply, outside of the historic district, it could be its own historic property. It is of great artistic merit, and it is of and by an important local architect. This building is unique to Brimfield. This is a fantastic existing historic resource. It's actually why we went after the job, is because we love this building so much. And this is, it's just such a unique property. So that is, that's really important background for this building. And we're going to talk about now how we need to treat this building with the utmost respect.